My name is Mark Hobart, and I am a catastrophist, Professor of Doom. And together with my colleague Kola here, we're going to present Public Service Announcement number 2, another approaching catastrophe, EMPs in the grid. You may have already seen PSA number 1, which is about Y2K38. There's certain preliminary slides here that you can look at in greater detail at my website, Catastrophic Thinking. The summary, the references which are displayed here. And this is about essential concepts. These videos illustrate certain aspects of catastrophic thinking and the 12 tools of caveat. In this video, we will focus on identifying strategic assets, identifying systemic vulnerabilities, think back for historical precedents, and develop policies with built-in resilience and sustainability. Now, catastrophe is a black swan. They have remote probabilities of occurring, so we tend to ignore them in public policy formation. Now, if we are able to identify strategic assets and systemic vulnerabilities that we have unintentionally built into those assets, we need to address what might go wrong and take reasonable measures to prevent disasters. And an example is the EMP threat, the electromagnetic pulses. Do and will happen. They are just as much a natural occurrence as earthquakes, floods, and tornadoes, which we do prepare for. Plasma ejected from the sun in coronal mass ejections are the cause of geomagnetic storms. And these things will fry anything that has an electrical antenna, which is anything that has conductive metals in them. We constantly do monitor for this in the Space Weather Prediction Center, and they can do this because light travels faster than plasma. And so we'll see the CMEs at a minimum of 8 minutes before they get here at the speed of light. Plasma travels much slower, and they issue these warnings. This one is from October 21. There was also one issued on October 23. It's a G3 level storm. And you can tell these storms, these geomagnetic storms, by the northern lights. Now, our electric grid is made up of conductive metals. We're totally dependent on electricity for our civilization. Even basic utilities rely on electricity. There will be no water, pumps, no heat, no light, frozen food, no cell phones or internet, and even vehicles contain conductive metals in them, and as a result will short out, burn out, quit working. And of course, if they've got circuits in them, those will fry too. Should you be afraid of prolonged failures of our electric grid? No, you should be terrified. Millions will die, including you. A solar storm could wipe out the grid was an article in the Wall Street Journal on October 12th, 2023. Refer you to that. Here's some definitions that I use throughout this PowerPoint. The one I want to focus on is the middle one, the EHV, the extra high voltage transformers. The Earth does have a natural defense, and we see it all the time because we can see the northern lights flashing overhead in the northern latitudes. The Van Allen belts are our electromagnetic defense, and they deflect most EMPs. They act as a natural Faraday cage, which I'll explain in a moment, but it can be overwhelmed. Remember, the sun is 1,300,000 times larger than the Earth. The greatest EMP so far did occur in 1859, the Carrington event. The electric grid back then was just telegraph wires, yet the electric sparks flew off the telegraph wires and caused fires. The transatlantic cables deep under the oceans shorted out. The northern lights were observed in Hawaii. But there's been a lot of these. They're usually smaller and more focused. The 1921 railroad storm lasted for 3 days, which indicates the kind of risk these things have. In 1972, the Vietnam storm, very focused, just on the area of Vietnam, detonated about 4,000 magnetically sensitive mines off the coast of Vietnam. The 1989 Hydro-Quebec storm blacked out the eastern half of Quebec for 9 hours, melted an EHV, that's extra high voltage transformer, at the Salem, New Jersey nuclear power plant, and did billions of other damage throughout North America. And in 2022, an EMP destroyed 40 Starlink satellites. So these little ones, these little EMPs, have demonstrated the kind of risks that are involved. Now, our technology has only developed one defense, and that is the Faraday cage. We think it can protect electronic equipment from an EMP. It's an enclosure with a continuous covering of mesh of metals designed to reflect electricity and or magnetic pulses. It must be completely sealed in all directions. Now, preppers are pretty smug because they have these, they build them, and they drive cars before 1975, but even that, they are susceptible to an EMP because they have wires, ignition coils, mechanical distributors, generators, fuses, starting motors, and they'll all fry, I tell you. Solar panels are susceptible too. They'll quit working because they're filled with an antenna, wiring, any wiring. And then preppers fill their Faraday cages with emergency radios, police scanners, replacement parts for their pre-1975 vehicles. But for what? Gas pumps are all electrically driven, and so gas will be unavailable. There won't be any police scanners. There won't be any radios. So I pose the question. We start our catastrophic thinking with, is the grid a strategic asset? Without the grid, urban areas will not survive. Millions of Americans will die from looting, civil unrest, societal collapse, lack of food and water, and disease with no operating hospitals. You decide. I think it is. So the next step in catastrophic thinking is to identify systemic vulnerabilities. And what is the worst one? The worst one are those EHV transformers. They have useful lives of about 30 or 40 years, but they were installed 30 or 40 years ago and are overdue to be replaced. It takes 18 months to manufacture one of them, with 3 to 5 years to go through the procurement process. Annual production is only about 200. They're custom built. 80% are not made in the U.S., primarily in Germany and South Korea, and very few backups exist, and those that exist are not in Faraday cages. Another vulnerability are the laptops. They'll all burn out. They've got chips in them. After transportation, to give you an example, what an EMP will impact the earth, well, you'll have horses, bicycles, you'll be on foot, canoes, maybe sailboats, but even more problematic is the steam-powered machines at the bottom of the list, because they have wiring in them, and the wiring will short out. And recovery won't be easy. This book, Dull Disasters, down below, EMP Survival, indicate how hard it will be to recover. Who's prepared to survive this? People who don't use electricity. Afghanistan, North Korea, Central Sahara Desert nomads. Preppers are survivalists who anticipate that no electrical mechanisms will survive. So what can we do? We can build a Faraday cage. Start with a trash can. Some say cover it with aluminum foil. Just ordinary aluminum foil will deflect an EMP. The ideal solution is to repurpose your old non-operative microwave, because it has sealing and insulation to prevent microwaves from exiting, which may also be for entering. To be safe, line the interior with a Faraday fabric. You can obtain these on Amazon. There, I've got some examples here of Faraday fabrics. They all look the same. They've got this gray metallic appearance. And then here's a list of them that I was able to obtain off of Amazon. Now, nothing here assures that your precious stuff will survive an EMP, even if it's in a Faraday cage. This is all theoretical. Everything here is only a guess as to what it would be like in a post-EMP world, but it will be bad. That you can count on. States are taking some steps to protect their electric grids. The 50 states of grid modernization, this is the executive summary. The actual report is much thicker. Lists what all the states and the District of Columbia are doing. I recommend this reading for you to understand what's being done. I suggest a couple things should be addressed as policies. We should create in the statute a declaration of approaching EMP, like a declaration of war. And it would contain some of these provisions. Martial law imposed with the activation of National Guard nationwide, curfews before dark because there won't be any street lights, there won't be any traffic signals, those will all burn out. Close the interstates and bridges except to first responders. We want to discourage traffic because the cars will quit working when the plasma gets here. Ground all flights like 9/11 and hope they can get to the ground before the plasma gets here. Order utilities to shut down blackout services to shield the infrastructure where possible. 3-day blackout is better than the alternative, which is years of recovery. Unplug everything, both for the utility and for you personally. And then finally, sovereign immunity for all actions taken by the government. We don't need to compound the misery with a plethora of lawyers and litigation. The other recommendation is to make EHV transformers here in the US. When they're fried worldwide, do you think Germany and South Korea will replace the burned out grid first or their own? We should manufacture hardened EHVs already with circuit breakers and Faraday cages built in to replace our aging grid transformers, increase our supply of backups, and be ready to supply at a profit the rest of the world. Catastrophic thinking will improve policy formation in America. The Essential Concepts video series will allow new and more approaches to policies to enable America to survive catastrophes. Not just this one, not just Y2K, but just any type of catastrophe. Then I will attach an appendix to this PowerPoint with key slide highlights, like the Faraday cages, efforts to protect the grid, the declaration, and the making EHVs here in the United States. Please support my efforts to become essential. There's essentialconceptsinc.com is a website and information, and I'll end every video with a prayer for peace. Thank you.